Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a cloud solutions architect specializing in management technologies. Today's discussion is a continuation of our series focused on the Intune Suite. The focus of our discussion today is Cloud PKI, and as I was approaching this session and thinking of recording it, I realized that I had previously done a session on Cloud PKI. So I'm going to use that for this discussion for continuity's sake. So with that in mind, I will fade over to that discussion and enjoy. Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a cloud solutions architect specializing in management technologies. Today's discussion will focus on Cloud PKI, which is a relatively new, as of this recording, addition to Intune and available as part of the Intune suite. So I want to take a look at it here. The typical agenda will follow what we generally do. I want to talk about what Cloud PKI is, why you care about it, talk about Cloud PKI versus on-prem PKI a bit. Then I want to take you through Cloud PKI, talk about some of the options, requirements for it, talk about how it works a little bit, show you how to configure this thing and the options for it, and then we'll actually see that it does work on some of our clients, and we will be done from there. So what is Cloud PKI? Well, Cloud PKI is a native Azure solution to fully implement, fully manage certificate delivery on devices in an organization, right? So typically speaking, PKI infrastructures are hosted on your own servers that you manage, typically either on-prem or you can do that in the cloud, too. You can manage your PKI servers. Cloud PKI is a service, effectively, that integrates with Intune, provides certificates to Intune devices, the SCEP certs, that you might be familiar with and configure differently, right? So the Intune devices that are supported include Windows, iPhone, iPad, Mac OS, Android, right? So we do have good coverage, as you might expect, for the kind of Intune devices. So that said, why do we care about Cloud PKI, right? Well, one reason is the on-prem infrastructure that you don't have to worry about. Another way of saying that, without Cloud PKI, it would be your full responsibility or your organization's full responsibility to stand up, manage, administer, troubleshoot, fix, upgrade, whatever, the PKI servers that are used to deliver certificates, right? With Cloud PKI, there's none of that. It's just simply a matter of deciding how you want the Cloud PKI servers, so to speak, configured, the root CA, the issuing CA, and then from there, they just are out there serving the certificates that you would like them to serve, right? Another thing with on-prem infrastructure is there are scalability questions, components, and so on. None of that with the Cloud PKI solution. Also, complexity, right? Complexity is an interesting thing because anyone who's worked with on-prem PKI infrastructures knows, there's some complexity there. There's multiple servers. There can be root CAs. There can be multiple issuing CAs you have to worry about, et cetera, et cetera. You can have components such as the Indes server, which is required whenever you're setting up cert integration between Intune and on-prem PKI that you have to worry about. Yeah, none of that you have to worry about. So you can reduce that complexity. One thing that might be at this stage, and I'll probably repeat some of these things as we go along, but one thing that might be in your mind now is to say, well, I'm hearing that this Cloud PKI is integrated with Intune. It's managed through Intune, and that's all correct. But we have a PKI team, and that PKI team is responsible for dealing with certificate delivery and so forth. Well, that's great, right? None of that changes necessarily. That PKI team can still be responsible for doing all of these things. through Intune. It's just a matter of now they don't have to worry about setting up the servers and doing all the connectors and etc. From there. And so ultimately, all of this is about delivering certificates. So cert deployment. And once we get the Cloud PKI servers defined and created, show you how to do that in a minute, then the cert delivery using the SCEP certificate delivery profile, either for Windows, Android, iOS, macOS, whatever, it's the same thing that you might be accustomed to doing already. There's only one difference, and that is the SCEP URL, and I'll show you where you can scrape that and get that whenever you configure your certificate profiles. Again, this is integrated, so it just is a very seamless thing to build into Intune. You'll see that. And reporting also will fold into this, so you may be familiar with some of the reporting options already. For our historical certificate tie-in and delivery, right? This just there's reporting options that just kind of slide in alongside of what you might be accustomed to. There are reporting options that will help you focus on certificates delivered through Cloud PKI. And again, I'll show you all of that in a moment. Right? So let's keep going. Okay, so kind of already done some of this, Cloud PKI versus on-prem PKI. Right? The good news is you can support cert delivery with either. If you are in a position that you want to maintain using your on-prem PKI servers for cert delivery to your Intune managed devices, no problem, right? We've had that support around for a long time. But if you are interested in moving to the more updated approach, more integrated approach of Cloud PKI we're talking about here, absolutely doable as well, right? So already contrasted a little bit with this, but just to say it again, with on-prem, you're going to need to manage your own servers. There's going to be infrastructure that you need to be able to pair your on-prem infrastructure with Intune. That would include things like the Indes servers that you will need, Indes connectors, and so on, right? This isn't hard to think about doing this on an on-prem, but it's not trivial either, because there's other concerns such as scalability and things that you need to consider if you're going to be doing certificate deployment at scale and so forth. None of that is a concern with Cloud PKI. Cloud PKI has everything it needs. There's no Indes connectors you need to manage. There's no Indes servers. There's none of that. Yeah, there are root CAs and issuing CAs that you need to define, but that's about it, right? You just define them, and then we build them and set them up, and you are good to go from there, right? I say there's no templates here, right? On a on-prem PKI infrastructure, you will need to define the templates that will dictate what kind of certificates you will deliver. You don't do it the same way with Cloud PKI. You'll see it in a minute, but basically from a drop-down list, you will decide what certs the Cloud PKI will be able to deliver and go from there. Okay, so options. When we look at Cloud PKI, there are really two big options. One is to let every single thing be in the cloud, and that means that you will define your root certificate authority in the cloud, as well as your issuing certificate authority. Or if you want to, you can integrate Cloud PKI with your on-prem root certificate authority. And I'll show you how to do both, as we go through here. So there are options if you do need to maintain that tie to your on-prem root CA. Okay, so in terms of requirements, so you do need appropriate licensing. So I mentioned already that Cloud PKI is part of the Intune Suite. So making sure that you're licensed for the Intune Suite will be a requirement. And Intune Suite has a whole lot of things in it that you would find valuable, such as remote help and other things. So definitely take a look at that, but you do need that licensing. And then basically a supported platform where you want to deliver certs, which is really a no-brainer for anyone who's using Intune, right? Windows, iOS, iPadOS, macOS, Android. We support all of those. So if you're running one of those, which you likely are with Intune, then you should be covered. Now, how does this all work? This is a diagram that I lifted out of our documentation. It's pretty simple to try to explain what's going on, but as we have the circle here, we have Intune here in the cloud. You kind of see the cloud enveloping certain ones of these. Then you have devices that are outside of the cloud that are being managed by Intune. You have the Intune console where you're going to go and you're going to create your Cloud PKI, and then your Cloud PKI service will be created in the Intune world, in the cloud, right? Built with Azure services, so to speak. Here, then you'll have your device, and so when it comes time to actually deploy a SCEP cert profile to your device, the device will get it. It'll check in, and based on having that profile, it's going to request a cert with the SCEP service, which is inside the Intune cloud, and then that SCEP service is going to go validate the request with the SCEP validation service, and then that's going to go back up to the Cloud PKI services to actually process that request, and then hand that back down to the SCEP service, which will then deliver the signed cert, and the process complete. So there's obviously a little bit more to that than is in the summary slide. But the good news is, with Cloud PKI, you don't need to worry about the minutia details of what happens on the back end. It's a service that we provide, and it just works. You go create your SCEP profile, provide the relevant information about what cert you want to create, and then the Cloud PKI will go and create that for you. Okay? All right, that said, let's actually get into the fun part of this and go start to configure this a bit. And so to do that, let me pull in the Intune portal. Here that is. And we're going to go first to the Cloud PKI area. That's going to be under Tenant Administration here. And we're going to walk through how to go create that. Let me wait on Intune, apparently, to load here. I'm going to take the zoom level down a little bit while we're talking. Come on, Intune. All right, there it is. So here on the tenant administration node, we have Cloud PKI. So I have a couple set up already. I'm just going to show you here how you would go about creating. So I have what I've built is I've got 2 issuing CAs and 2 root CAs. Really, the only one I care about is this one. Right now, these I'll talk about these more in a minute. But pretty soon, I may even be at my limit now of creating. Don't know. But as I mentioned, Cloud PKI, as of this recording, is a relatively new released feature, and in its current state, right now I cannot delete any CAs that I create. Right. And so these are ones that I would like to actually delete, and hopefully we'll have the delete option come in at some point into Intune so I can get rid of these. But right now I just created these and can't. There's also a limit. I may be at my limit. It's either 6 or 7 CAs that I can create. But anyway, these 2. This one is the one I care about, right? This is my on-prem. I'm sorry, that's wrong. This is my cloud root CA, right? This one I created that first. Can't remember what I didn't like about it, so I created this one. So that's not what I'm really using. This one is tied to this one. So the one labeled issuing is tied to root, and you can tell that that's the case by looking over at the cloud server and being able to see, hey, this one is tied to root 2. So this is an issuing, it's tied to root 2. This is an issuing, and it's actually tied to my on-prem root CA, right? So once we create certs, so the whole process, whenever you create a root CA or want to enable your devices to be able to receive certificates from a root CA, you need to make sure that your devices trust that root CA. And part of that, I'll show you in a minute, is pushing out the root cert from that root CA using a trusted certificate profile, which I will do that in a minute for these, right? Then from there, you use the SCEP profile to actually request certs to be sent to the device. You'll see that in a minute too, right? So let me just show you. To create these, I will just, okay, so it's max number of attendance has been reached, so I can't show you, that's interesting, the create process, but I will go into these and show you the properties where I can go create. So let me show you this root CA. So what I've built here is whenever you go configure it, it's going to ask you, there's going to be a drop down that will ask you what type of certificate authority do you want to create, and it will be either a root or an issuing CA. So you'll first choose that, and then if it's an issuing CA, you'll have other questions you'll have to answer. You'll see that in a minute. But the next thing you have to do is specify what kind of certs you want to be able to deploy from issuing CAs that are attached to this particular root, right? So on the root CA, you will need to specify these, otherwise you won't be able to create them on the issuing CA. And you can have one or all of them. I just went ahead and chose all of these these types of certificates that I want to create. And I mentioned before that when you are creating this in Cloud PKI, there's no requirement that you go create templates. That's one of the things that maybe is a convenience, whatever here. In my mind, you are creating templates by just specifying what kind of cert you want to deliver, but it's just from a drop down versus actually having to go through and create all these templates. From there, you specify how long you want this root CA to be valid. So I just chose 25 years and give it a common name. There can be some other things that you can provide besides common name. Common name is required. And then we'll get a CRL distribution point and different things that you can have. And then finally, a link to download the cert. Well, why would you want to download the cert? Because in order to use this root CA, your devices need to trust this root CA, and so you will need to deploy the cert for this root CA to your devices. And you will see that I have already downloaded that, right? So from there, I would just take that, put it into the trusted root CA profile, deploy it, we're good. And I'll show you that in a second. Right, okay, so now there's, so that's my Cloud PKI based root CA. So from there, I'm going to attach my issuing CA to it. And so if I look at the properties of it, you can see, okay, well, I've chosen the CA type is going to be issuing. The root CA that this is associated with is the one I just showed you. And because all of these extended key usages were defined on the root, I can choose to deploy them from this issuing. Don't have to deploy all of them from this particular issuing CA, but you can, right? And here's my validity period for the issuing. And then here is uniquely the SCEP URL that you will then use for your SCEP certificate profiles when you define them. And that's all you need, right? Okay, now there's another way to define this. You could decide that you want to actually use an on-prem root CA. So I don't have anything here to define my on-prem root CA. But this one is actually linked. Here, let me go back and show you just real quick. This issuing 2 is actually linked to my on-prem root CA, and I can tell that by looking in the properties of this one. And indeed, it's an issuing CA as a type. It doesn't really have any more information here because this is going to get its root settings from the root CA. Like validity period, I can't configure that because it's going to be based on my root CA and so forth. I do still get my SCEP URL. And one thing that I need to do, which is why I created these other servers, when I create an issuing CA that is tied to my on-prem root, then I need to get that issuing CA basically approved by my on-prem root. So what I need to do is go through a process like these two that I just created real quick before I realized I probably couldn't find a way to delete these, right? This is saying it's not ready to go, right? It's not in an active status. It's in a signing required status because it needs to be signed by my root CA. So if I click on it, I get the option to download my certificate signing request. I would then process that with my on-prem root CA, and then once I get that processed, I would take the certificate that's produced and I would upload it here so that the process is complete and the link is complete. So what I have here is my on-prem root CA, and basically here's my Cloud PKI certificate signing request from my issuing 2, my Cloud PKI issuing server. So I can take this and I could process. There's a couple of ways that we document that you can process this. I simply use cert request and cert util to be able to do that on my CA. Again, we document how to do that, no problem. And then I have this certificate that is produced that I can then upload into Intune, and my linkage is then complete, right? My linkage is then complete. So now the way that we document how to do this is going to need to be tweaked a little bit for your specific scenario. But let me show you just an example of what I did to sign the cert, and then I would get the cert I need to upload issued as a result of that command. So this is just an example of the cert request command that I use. So I'm going to use cert request. I'm going to submit the certificate template here, and then my configuration is going to be the actual name of my root CA. So this is the name of it. And then my cert request is the name of the cert request, and then certnew.cer is going to be the output. Now you'll need to tweak these names to match what you have actually configured, but that will actually produce your required certificate that you can upload into Intune and then go from there, right? Okay. So now that I've got here, let me get the Intune portal. Where did it go? Now that I've got these certificates created, then I need to actually deploy them now that I have these Cloud PKI servers created, I actually need to deploy the root CA cert and then also a SCEP cert. So I just did that under Windows, and here's my configuration profiles. There's a couple that I did. The first is to deploy the root cert. So here's my on-prem root cert. Here's my Cloud PKI root cert. These are very, very easy to deploy. If you've ever created one, you know it's just actually pointing to the file. So I'll just say this, and then I'll use templates. And then here is my trusted certificate profile that I want to create. I'll just do that. And the only thing it's going to ask me for is what my destination store is going to be, and then select the CER file, which is the cert that you get from your root CA, and then you deploy it out, and your devices have it, and then they trust your root CA. And those are very easy. So I have both of these deployed. You'll see this on-prem root. I've got 4 deployed successfully, no issue at all. And then for my Cloud PKI root, I have those 4 deployed successfully, no problem at all. Right? From there, you are then able to create your SCEP certs. And that's where I can certainly give you an example, but in terms of all of the different ways that you might want to configure your certs, there's a bunch of them, and that's on you and your PKI team to figure out the exact details that you want to specify. But here's 2 that I did. This is my SCEP cert, just with my issuing PKI server that trusts my Cloud PKI root CA. Here's the same exact SCEP cert profile that is trusting my on-prem root, and I've deployed both. So if I go to this one, you'll see there's 4 successful, and I can look at what I did. I'll just edit my configuration. Pretty easy. I used a device cert. Here's subject name format. I'm using DNS as an attribute. Again, this may or may not be a meaningful example for you, but it does work. 5 years, I'm enrolling to my software KSP. I'm going to do key encipherment 2048 using SHA-1 and 2. And here's my root CA that was defined as a Cloud PKI root CA. And then my extended key usage is client auth. This is where I would put in the SCEP server URL that I lift off of my issuing CA, and then I'm done. So I can deploy that one. So I'll cancel that. You'll see that it is, in fact, deployed successfully, right? So I'll go to the other one as well and show you that it as well is deployed successfully. So there's 4 succeeds there, okay? Now, from there, we want to be able to tap into some reports and see what's going on. So since both of these SCEP certificate profiles are the same, since they're deployed successfully, I'll just use this. All right, we can look at our device assignment status and generate our report here and be able to see what the devices have received the instructions to provision the cert. As soon as this comes up, we'll basically see 4 devices, the lab devices that I have, that show success, right? If I go back and look at, I can look at per setting status. Heck, let's do it. It'll just tell me basically success, 4 successes, right? And then finally, if I go back, I can look at the actual certificates that were deployed as a result. And so you can get the thumbprint, serial number, all of this detail, key encipherment, what it is, when it was done, etc. Right? So from this particular certificate profile, we can actually track what's going on as a result, which is really, really nice. But I mentioned earlier that we do have kind of an all-up view of certificates that have been delivered. So imagine that maybe you decide to start working with Cloud PKI, but you do have on-prem PKI servers that you're connected to. So maybe you're trying to just see, hey, will Cloud PKI be a good option to maybe move from on-prem connections to using the Cloud PKI? And so you can use both at the same time. If I go under devices and I look specifically at the monitor node, and then here look at my certificates report, I will see all of the certs that have been deployed, whether they come from Intune directly with Cloud PKI or whether they come from Intune connected with on-prem, we can tell here, right? So here's the Cloud PKI stuff that was delivered, and then here's other stuff that was delivered. So it kind of boils up to the all-up view. And then while we're talking about demos, let me get rid of this for a moment and go down and pull in one of my lab machines here. So here's just a Windows 10 machine, and I'll look in the cert MMC, and I can go in and find these certs that have been delivered. So if I want to look under my trusted root CA, then I'll see my Cloud PKI certs are here. So this is how I trust my my Cloud PKI root CA. There's also one for my on-prem. I think this is it here. That's the on-prem. So my root CAs are definitely trusted, and that's why I'm able to deploy these certs. One from my Cloud PKI only issuing cert, and one from my Cloud PKI issuing cert that is linked to my on-prem root CA, right? So that just kind of shows the process, so to speak, end to end. And I've already done the in-action piece along with that demo, right? But Cloud PKI is a really, really important thing. It really simplifies the process. One thing that I didn't mention that I will here, right? And I mentioned it with a little bit of hesitancy because I want to make sure this is understood well, right? One thing that I have seen as I've helped customers set up the integration with their on-prem PKI servers, set up SCEP cert delivery and whatever, is that in certain places, there will be additional teams required to finish the process, meaning at a certain point or two in the setup process, a global admin, Azure AD, Entra ID admin, will be required. That will be required to set up the various connectors that are required in the setup process. And that's not a big deal, right? The global admins are happy to help generally. But it's just another dependency that you have in getting this stuff configured. Also, there is a dependency on the PKI team to own and maintain the server infrastructure and provide the Indes server and so forth, which again, they're generally willing to do, but it's just another dependency. So with Cloud PKI, the Intune admin is able to do all of this, right, without having to involve other people in the process because it's all baked into Intune. Now, please don't hear that as an endorsement to say you don't need to be working with your other teams. Of course you do, right? It just simplifies the process, and there's no real roadblocks getting in the way in terms of technology to getting some of this stuff done. Certainly, work with the teams that you need to work with. There's ways to help them be able to do, like if your PKI team wants to take responsibility for doing the profiles and managing the Cloud PKI root CAs and issuing. They can do that for sure, right? Not saying that they can't, but it just streamlines the process a bit, right? So that's Cloud PKI. I do expect that there will be some enhancements perhaps coming, like hopefully the ability to delete a Cloud PKI server so I can clean my environment up. But wanted to share that with you here. So we will wrap this session at this point, and we will see you